If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
Blah, blah, blah.
Sending out good vibes.
Blah, blah, blah.
Good vibes.
Blah,
Good vibes.
blah, blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that.
That's a pretty strong connection to your food. And it's really quite a humbling experience. And also you realize that it does take a community to feed a family.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica show. We are going to be chatting with Suzanne Crocker a little bit later about her documentary, First We Eat. Fantastic film there. It was a good one. I seen it myself. I watched it in a hotel in a shitty hotel in Kamloops, British Columbia.
You had to be
halfway through my flight with no mask.
You were hunting.
Yes, I missed the interview because I was stuck on the base because of that god-awful 5-kilometer elk retrieval.
Funny, we were talking about hunting on the show quite a bit.
Ben?
Yeah, well, it's First We Eat is,
Shoots a moose.
her husband tried to go out and shoot that moose. He almost missed the season. I mean, that's how close it comes, right?
He got her, though.
Yeah.
Fucking ate that shit, too. Yeah, I had missed the interview for the season.
Yeah.
Season's coming up again, I guess.
What season? The hunting season?
There's another elk season, another elk like base thing, the January 25th, 26th.
That's got to be a little riskier. That's pretty chilly, I bet.
Yeah, I'm going to keep an eye on the weather. I don't think the Chinooks quite blow it that far either. We'll see. Freeze is pretty full. Take another couple of months off. Getting ready to get into some ice fishing too.
Yeah, Marie and I might try the carnivore diet. I'm leaning towards that. Reading the book. Have you ever got in touch with any of these guys on Twitter?
Does this mean you'll get a hunting license eventually so you can feed
I'm just
Maria?
gonna just slide you under the table dough for meat.
That's fine.
Or I'll shovel your driveway or something. I'll trade Z's, yeah.
I can't picture you shoveling my driveway. It'll be like 3 days late and half-ass.
Oh, come on.
I haven't been by your place since how'd the shoveling go?
That was rough.
Was it?
Yeah.
How long did it take you?
Like 45 minutes now. I do it in my shorts usually just to get that cold, that real cold bite.
I'll see you that guy. They're like, the whole block's like, look at this guy. Shorts guy's out there again. Do you wear your Grimerica shirt at least?
Some kids came by yesterday to shovel. I didn't even know it snowed the night before.
Did they have masks on?
And they're like knocking on the door. They're like, no, they didn't have masks on. And they're like, hey, we'll do this little part of your thing and we'll do the front driveway for $20, they said. And I said, no way, $20. I'll give you 10.
$20 is steep. I don't know where the rates. I remember Grandma used to give us $10.
Well, I told the guy, don't take too much time. I gave him $10. I said, just make sure the sidewalk is done.
Plus, it hasn't even snowed much.
Sidewalk.
And
like they didn't even do it.
It was like
the kids didn't even do the sidewalk.
Really?
That's what I need done. I don't care about my driveway. I want the sidewalk done. So somebody doesn't slip in front of my house.
Did you pay them ahead of time?
I did, yeah.
You can't pay them up
I know.
front,
I had to go. I was coming here. I had to go.
So you paid them and then they watched you drive away?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you just instant burn. I guarantee you're surprised. You're lucky they shoveled anything. I probably would just been like, "Fuck this now. We just never come back to this place."
Yeah, exactly.
If you would have given them the 20, they probably would have shoveled. But they were like, first he fucking counters us for 50%, and then he just drives out of here. Packs down the snow a little more.
If I wasn't in such a rush, I would have told him exactly what to do and maybe even
give
him a bit
after.
More. But,
yeah. And then you just you don't have to give him more. You just pay him
later.
After
even
just
yeah.
They're just kids.
I know. I just had to run. And honestly, I was caught off guard because I didn't even know it snowed the night before. So.
Do you like living a little? Do you? How often do you open your blinds?
Every day, man.
Every day.
Yeah.
Because didn't you come here? What?
Let's not get
when
into
are we
it. Let's not
talking?
get into it. That's fine. Whatever. I just didn't
It's
know.
fine.
I wasn't.
You don't want to go there?
No.
All right. So what do you got?
Well,
Suzanne
I don't know,
Crocker.
man.
It was a great doc. I watched the documentary.
It was a great
in
interview too.
preparation
Yeah,
for the show.
it was interesting. It's very interesting, man. Eating local. Like, what does it take to eat local? This family did it for a year. They just ate local for a
It'd be
year.
Much easier here because here you can get honey, loads of honey locally.
Yeah.
They had trouble with the sweetener.
Yeah, they had trouble with the sweetener, but they figured it out
And
eventually.
There's salt around here too.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know if it's that. So that's going to be the challenge with eating carnivores. You're not even. I guess I can use salt. I mean, here, how bad is this that I'm flip flopping back between vegan and carnivore? But I mean, either way, I got to cut back the carbs. You know, I'm going to try carnivore for
Why don't
Maria
you
because
try
I think
both?
Maria's really.
Why don't
It's
you
going to
try
help Maria
both
quite a bit.
and
I'm
just
gonna
no
try.
carbs?
Yeah. Well,
Why don't you just try eating what you want but no carbs?
Yeah, maybe.
They're so good though.
I know. It's so.
Is a potato a carb?
Engineered for the mouthfeel.
Is a potato a carb?
I think so.
I ain't giving up potatoes ever again.
Have you ever been in touch with the carnivore guys on Twitter or
Like
anything
which
like
ones? All of them? Any of them? Not really. It's not really something I've considered
that?
personally.
Oh, okay.
I kind of lean that way, and my personal.
Yeah, you were talking about it the other day. Like,
Yeah, my personal, I don't know what you would call it. My personal ideology on diet is that I can get by on mostly meat and fat.
that's what this guy's saying.
And everything else is sort of filler, and I eat a lot of meat, and we eat a lot of fat. So, but I mean, I like vegetables and stuff too, and I don't think they're giving me any problems. And I don't think vegetables are the problem, because when I quit eating, not even like carbs per se, because I'm potatoes. I'm a big potato fan, especially in the winter. Big potato guy, and I'm not going to stop. I gave those up for a while and never again. I know they make me sleepy, and I'm okay with that. Same with white rice will make me sleepy, but I can like weaponize that and use it. I just have a bowl of white rice when I can't sleep, and it's just worth it sometimes. Sometimes when dinner makes you sleepy, that's okay. I'm a little sleepy on the couch. I wouldn't want to have, say, rice or potatoes for lunch so much. I'd avoid that because I don't want to be sleepy in the afternoon. But by dinner time and after dinner, all bets are off, man, because I don't mind if I get sleepy. I fell asleep last night actually watching that Great Pyramid of Giza documentary about where they're saying it was all concrete, all different forms of concrete, Giza, and it was like a technology that degraded through Greece and Rome. It makes a lot of sense. I don't know. I'm having trouble with the whole timeline. The history timeline is wobbling for me again these days.
I know, me too.
I see a bunch of those pictures about back in like the 40s and the 30s and 40s when they're excavating Rome. And I just don't understand what the fuck Rome was doing under 40 feet of shit.
I know. So those are real pictures from.
Yeah,
and then
I
it
don't
goes 40 feet down. Yeah.
There's no historic explanation for why Rome was buried with shit. It was just supposedly it fell apart because of corruption and Christianity.
The Pompeii thing fits in with that. I think there's no explanation for the timeline of the way Pompeii.
It actually fits in too with the novel series I'm going through. It's one of those
fact based on fiction based on fact.
Yeah, well, I already went through a bunch of the Rome stuff, right?
Or fiction based on possible facts.
I don't know what they call it. It's like
historical fiction,
history.
History. Yeah.
I don't know. Historical fiction, I guess.
Yeah.
I went through a couple Rome ones, but lately I've been doing the Saxon stories or whatever they are. Anyway, Bernard Cornwell, they're good stuff. And it's just interesting because there's just these little tidbits, and he's taken a lot of it out of his buddy's notes, right? And there's just a ton of tiebacks to Buddy talking about how great the Romans were, how they try and build on top of the Roman shit, and you can see where they started because it's shit. And it's just like, I don't care how corrupt you are, there's no explanation for the total loss of technology and expertise. Like, you shouldn't have lost all form of craftsmanship.
Yeah. Yeah. We should dig into that one of these days. You're talking about sort of the Tartaria,
I guess, but it's mostly just because I got into the Rome. I started going down the Rome rabbit hole, and I didn't even get into Tartaria then.
Well,
I just got into Rome.
Yeah. Well, let's get somebody on to talk about Rome from an alternative perspective.
Going through all the explanations of fucking Rome, and then just seeing where, like, England is at 1,000 years later is just, it's like fucking puddle jumping compared to, there's no explanation for it. And even Rome itself is falling apart at that point. It seems more likely that those Roman priests just walked into that shit.
Even in the Vikings episodes, they had in northern England, I guess they had a cathedral type thing there, and one of the Vikings was meeting the one of the religious scholars of the time, I guess, down there, and the king showed him the underground the castle, and it was all this Roman work. Like, he's like, look, this is what it used to be like. And it was fascinating to see from a perspective of only 800 or 900 AD. They were looking back at the Roman history saying, like,
yeah, to me,
look at how advanced this was.
That's the exact time frame I'm talking about. Is that time frame looking back?
That was around the Saxons.
And wishing they could have that.
Yeah. It's super fascinating to me. I never liked history.
So it makes me think more that, like, the Christians found the fucking Rome.
Oh, further. Oh, you're thinking that goes. You're thinking it's further back.
Said it was theirs.
Right. Right.
And it didn't decay. They just took over the place. They just because it seems to be at that time when Christianity is still very culty.
Yeah. Well, and the profane didn't know much back then, I don't think. I mean, there was societies for the initiated, I think knowledge was hoarded way more than it is nowadays.
Yeah, we should go down the Rome rabbit hole.
Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. All right, can I read some feedback? Because we got some stuff to discuss. Oh, just some feedback. Good feedback.
And now another edition of the Grimerica Goodies by the people, for the people.
This is timely because we just put out a swapcast with the Snake Bros and Cosmographia with Randall Carlson.
Snake at a bro.
And Brad Young. Hey, my bros, I was put on your podcast by the mighty Snake Bros. I love you guys and look forward to your podcast every week. Please keep up the good work. Such relatable content, and it's so good to feel part of your community. I've stumbled across UK Column podcast recently and Sunday Wire. Reckon you guys would love the vibe. Good, insightful take on current affairs. Possible guests for the show, maybe. Anyways, haven't reached out to you guys as I'm not in the habit of writing random fan mails, but I felt I had to say big thanks for everything you do. Too skint, too bung you dollars right now, but I'll make up for my lack of donations one day when I can. Peace.
Peace to you. Peace be unto you.
Thank you. And I got some other feedback here. I think this was in response to your sorry to see you go email that you send to people.
Spam Graham.
Hey, Darren. PayPal just canceled my monthly subscription for y'all with no reason. I still have a $2.22 subscription with y'all, though, and I'll be renewing the one they just canceled as well. Being a long-time listener, supporter, Graham read one of my trip reports concerning Salvia divinorum, including lucid dreams, I think, on a Mothman episode a few years back. Grimerica was the first podcast I got into, and y'all opened up a whole new world for me. Been loving the shows. I do miss more of the fringe interviews, but I feel like Graham that we have to push back. This is bullshit. And we'll only stop when we stop it. People like us need to be heard now more than ever. Love you guys. Frank. And that was in response. Oh, I thought there was another.
That was in response to my sorry to see you go.
Then he says, oh, and P.S. Yeah, and he sent back another one. I, along with almost half my family, caught COVID this summer.
Oh, yeah, that's why I sent that to you.
Guess what? We're still all alive and well. This is most definitely bullshit. The medicine is way worse than the disease. This is coming from someone who caught the disease. Love you guys. Keep going. And that kind of leads us into what we need to talk about. Because we realized that we got one of our little YouTube videos deleted. Somebody and it was that clip of the we
got a first YouTube
What was his
strike.
name again? What was it? What was his position again? Pathologist. He was a pathologist that actually works on the PCR testing, I think, and he was pushing back in Alberta. But Darren put it on our YouTube feed and we got it deleted. Anyways, you know, we're seeing people get deleted. So if we want to talk about vitamin D or invermectin or health and wellness from a natural perspective, it's more risky right
Or
now than talking
hardcore
about
pedo shit.
all kind of stuff.
Not being pedos, but like abducting pedos.
You think that'll fall into the category? So anyways, yeah, maybe. Yeah, I guess.
Well, I mean, there's been a bunch of stuff that we haven't gone near in Grimerica, just not for any real reason, but there's just sort of stuff we haven't got into. That's just a little darker.
And we're getting into the COVID stuff, and it seems to be too controversial for.
I'm thinking even more than COVID. There's about to be a major pushback on vaccines.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I think we're going to be majorly pushing back up against. And the email, you know, it affected our ability to go live for a week and things like that.
Oh, did it?
And the next one, I don't know, could be 6 months. And it's like, you know, we don't really care about the videos so much, but I know, you know, there's 60 or 70 people that enjoy tuning into that. I mean, hundreds of people watch them, thousands of people watch some of them. But it's a good interface to go live and interact with the audience, with a bunch of people enjoy now.
But plus,
and it'll be a shame to start losing that.
But plus, it could be like this stuff with PayPal or with the podcast feed, or if we start pushing back too hard against vaccines and COVID, like we're just right now we're stealthily under the radar. But how long are we going to stay like that for? Right? Maybe
we
not
have
long.
concerns, and we're at the point now where, as if we did take a hit like that, that would affect us quite a bit, to the point where it would probably affect our ability to continue podcasting. It'd be a pretty big hit right now to say have our PayPal ability taken down, or our feed taken down, or anything.
I mean,
like that.
YouTube channel is one thing, but that's really just a repository of our live streams, really.
Yeah, so we decided, we don't want to stop doing that stuff, but we also don't want to risk the 8 years of work we've built sort of building Grimerica, which to be fair, hasn't been built on a lot of that stuff. It's like a very small percentage of what we do here in Grimerica is the COVID and the more hardcore controversial conspiracy stuff. And then we've had this sort of black budget feed lying around for a while that, originally started to be sort of a members thing and to try and stimulate more support years ago, and without paywalling and things like that. And lately it's become sort of more of a dumping ground for editing, to help with our editing process for the audiobooks, because you guys can listen to that. It's extra content for you guys. And then we get feedback on them during the editing process, which helps us correct, or, Graham fucked up here, or you missed a thing there, or whatever. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to pull those audiobooks and we're going to make them available to our supporters in a different method, probably through a password protected website page with some downloadable links, things like that. Remove them from the black budget feed altogether for copyright reasons, which I think we would have probably had to do inevitably eventually anyway. And we're going to kind of repurpose that feed, rename it,
and publish it properly.
Because right now it's only navigable by link, or through the Grimerica website. There's a player in there, which there still will be. And we're going to make the Grimerica, I think we settled on Grimerica Outlawed.
Yeah, we're going to call it something else, but it'll have the Grimerica name. It'll have a similar artwork to the black budget artwork. We were talking about
the art tonight.
We were talking about different names. Like one of my favorites was Rogue Works.
It's too late now.
But
we went with Outlawed.
Yeah, Grimerica
the art's
Outlawed.
In process.
Right, the art's. Yeah,
we like Rogue, but there's a bunch of
connotations with Rogue.
Yeah, about half the definitions for Rogue and include dishonest.
I kind of wanted Works in there somehow, like almost like a Skunk Works, like Rogue Works, but Outlawed Works. Yeah, well, I don't know.
Grimworks.
Oh,
that's what it was like originally.
What?
That's
right. That's right. I forgot about that.
Jordan's like, fuck you,
Grimworks, yeah.
He made it all like that.
Did I suggest that, or was that Jordan?
I can't remember.
Huh.
But anyway, I digress. The point is, we're going to redo that feed, and we're going to start throwing all of our COVID stuff in there. and it's going to be in iTunes, and we're going to publish it every place so that everyone can get access to it. We're going to build it its own website, its own PayPal. It'll be, it'll still be free. It'll all be value for value.
Because there is other content that we want to do too. We want to read some articles. I've got some articles read that we want to put in there,
that
but
we're
it's
not
a little
sure
too,
what to do with.
Yeah, and then there's some studies. I want to read some studies on vitamin D and all the scary things like natural cures, that would be censored. I mean, can you imagine that we're at the point now where you got to worry about studies on vitamins?
We don't want to have people come on the show for an interview if it's only for a secret feed and they're only getting, a few hundred people listening to it. So we're going to publish that feed, open it up, hopefully get you guys sharing it and moving around and all that stuff. It'll remain the same as it is now. That feed will be the same as it is now, but it'll have a new website, a new name.
So everybody that has access doesn't have to do a thing about it.
No, nothing will change there.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's a good question.
But it'll probably start becoming a lot more regular because we're going to, that's where our vaccine and our COVID and the more controversial things are going to go. And the Grimerica stuff will just keep pushing forward with the same stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a question for you there.
If you hate it, let us know. But that's kind of what we came up with.
Oh, how are we going to entice? How are we going to entice donations now?
This way, we keep everything value for value. Well, I don't know. We had kind of stopped using it to entice donations a while ago.
Yeah,
it's been almost.
It wasn't there for that either, but
now it's officially not there for that. No one can accuse us of it being there.
But we still want to stay value for value and not have ads. And I mean, a lot of these podcasts that I listen to, even they have ads, and it drives me nuts. I can fast forward them all the time. Like, we don't want to do that.
Yeah, we need. I
don't
want
to be shilling for companies, right?
We need the support. So all of a sudden, this is going to be more work, more cost, more.
I mean, we were considering putting it on another server, but our own server, but that's just a little bit more now. So if something happens with this one, then we'll probably have to go to that.
Yes. And I got a guy actually that's going to work on uploading all our videos and all that stuff to all those different platforms, all our old videos and audios to like library and all that stuff. I forget who. I'll give him a shout out next episode because I don't have his name handy, but we appreciate that. And of course, big shout out to iShaman, who is making it available and easily downloadable for him to do that. He's got our whole YouTube back catalog downloaded.
Yeah, that's unreal. That's great. Thank you. I mean, honestly, the people in the chats have been fantastic, and I wish I could spend more time in there.
Anyway, this is what we came up with. It probably means more content because we'll probably try and get in the swing of at least bi-weekly on the one feed, and
it's no less.
The same.
It's no less than it's probably a little less, but it's no less than weekly in the regular feed.
Yeah,
probably a little less than there is now because we have so much coming out. I mean, we're sort of backlogged as it is right now as well.
Yeah. Anyway, it'll be a bunch more episodes in the new feed. It'll be fun. There won't be intros or anything like that. It'll just be the interviews. And, that's that. So it'll probably be GrimericaOutlawed.com. 2021. I highly doubt that's taken. Wouldn't that be something if that URL was taken? Motherfucker.
Yeah.
I think we're pretty safe when we go with our own branding. And I mean, honestly, with the website, it could just be Grimerica.outlawed.com or /outlawed.com because I'm not worried about the website. Website's on our servers protected.
Yeah.
It's everything else, the PayPal and all those things. So it'll have a new support page probably. Well, that's why it needs to have a new page because it has to have a new PayPal and everything. Yeah, so it'll be like GrimericaOutlawed.com/support.
Yeah, we'll put new links and everything. And we'll talk about it.
.com will point. I'll get the pointer. But it's coming. We're going to roll out 2021 with the new feed, a side-by-side sister show to the Grimerica show. Hopefully it won't get... It'll have its own YouTube channel and everything. All that. We're not going to get new Twitters and everything, but we'll have a new YouTube channel. It'll be that black budget RSS feed. And, bingo bango. What you got?
I got a quote from Charlie Robinson.
Charlie
Robinson.
Speaking of Charlie, we'll be talking to him in just a minute, eh?
I think so, yeah.
It's the
profound quote of the week. Darren, can you guess it? It's the profound quote of the week.
Okay.
Can you guess?
You might be able to guess this.
Or wrote it down.
Hank?
Power is of two kinds. One is obtained by the fear of punishment, and the other by the acts of love. Power based on love is 1,000 times more effective and permanent than the one derived from fear of punishment.
Julius Caesar.
Mahatma Gandhi.
Damn it.
Close. And that's about it. There you have it. So there's no outro to this one. Darren, you want to do one quickly or just say right now this is going to end abruptly?
Does it end abruptly?
Yeah, because I put a note in the show notes that there's no outro. So this is the outro. Please support the show, right?
Yeah. Why wouldn't you have done an outro?
Because I was scrambling to, you were here, I think, at the time. Or I don't know, something was going on. I had to get off.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
This
thanks
is
for
the outro.
listening.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next week.
So tonight we've got Suzanne Crocker with us. She made a documentary called First We Eat. It's fantastic. Divine timing. It came out, I guess, a couple years ago now or last year. But it's good to talk to you, Suzanne. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to be there. It actually just had its world premiere in May.
Oh, right. Oh, you made. Okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you made it. Yeah, it was made. Okay, good. I saw on the Vimeo. I saw 9 months ago. That's what kind of confused me there. But yeah, that's Darren and I both watched it. We loved it because you're in basically north of us. I mean, I was looking on the map before we started. You're from Dawson City, right? So you're up there.
Yeah, we're about 300 kilometers south of the Arctic Circle. So up on the border of Alaska and 64 degrees north. Pretty far.
Yep. I mean, honestly, I'd like to congratulate you for the documentary. It was a pleasure to see that. And I think it was a great idea. Like, was it your idea to start?
Oh, you bet. It certainly wasn't my family's.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting how you kind of I could tell that you were just like, okay, this is something very important to do. It's very important to document. I mean, it really was just a great way to document your experience.
Yeah, I love documentary as a way of storytelling and also a way of sharing, really.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's get into what happened. So I was just searching online here quickly. You're 31 hours. So you're 2,700 kilometers from us. This is how big Canada is, right? You're really just northwest of us, but you're 2,700 kilometers away.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can imagine, therefore, how far our food comes when it's trucked in, because it probably, most of it doesn't originate where you are. It is even, a few thousand kilometers from you. So by the time it gets to us, oh my gosh.
So let's just give the listeners an overview of the movie. And and I'd like to say before we get into it, Darren is actually just pulling an elk off the military base in 5 kilometers of snow. So he couldn't make it tonight, just to let everybody know he's out there hunting with some friends. So So
But
let's.
That's really kind of opportune considering the topic of our discussion today.
Exactly. Yeah, he's been doing it all year. He's been he's got meat. He's learned how to make sausages. That's probably why this film interested him so much. I mean, this is probably the one show he really wanted to make. Usually he doesn't do all the research I do, but he's been making sausage and canning things and jerky and, steaks. And I helped him the other day. I helped him sort of skin a deer, which is my first experience at that. I'm not one to really hunt, but I think it's a skill that's probably good to learn.
Yeah, for sure. It's good to understand that meat doesn't really come on a styrofoam package covered in cellophane.
Yeah.
And especially, for those of us that choose to eat meat, it's good to understand actually where it comes from.
Yeah, exactly.
Be a part of that process. So that's great. Congratulations.
Yeah. So what, your movie was inspired by an event, I guess, but do you want to talk about the overarching kind of theme of it, and then we can dig into it a little bit?
Sure. So it's called First We Eat. And basically, I decided to take every little bit of grocery store food out of our house for an entire year up in Dawson City in the Yukon and only live on food that can be grown, raised, gathered, hunted, fished around Dawson. And important to know, I think we already mentioned that we're 300 kilometers south of the Arctic Circle. And also important to know that I have a family of 5 that includes 3 teenagers, one of whom, was a 17-year-old 6-foot son who was trying to pack away 4,000 to 6,000 calories a day. So you can imagine how it went over when I said all the grocery store food was leaving for a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also important to know that we have only about 66 consecutive frost-free growing days.
Wow, that's it?
Just to put that in perspective. Although I have to say, because we're blessed with, almost 24 hours of daylight in the summer, it may be short, but it's an intense growing season because things can grow day and night. So that definitely helps.
That is interesting. Yeah. So is there literally does the sun, you can see the sun all night or?
Yeah, at the height of solstice, the end of June.
Yeah.
It just never gets dark.
Wow.
In fact, you can travel up to what we call the Midnight Dome.
Yeah.
In Dawson and on solstice, and you can just watch the sun go around the horizon. And
no way, really? Wow.
Yeah, pretty cool.
That's awesome. So what about the nighttime in the winter then? Or, is it the same in the winter?
So there's a lot of nighttime in the winter for sure. We don't have 24 hours of darkness ever, but we do have, I would say, a good 6 weeks where the sun doesn't get above the horizon. And so our daylight is more like dusk for about 5 hours.
Yeah.
So when that sun starts to peak up, we're in a valley. So when the sun starts to peak up over the hills, the end of January again, people actually will go and stand in the spot where the sun is shining. There'll be a specific spot and people will just stand in it and bask for 5 minutes. And then after the end of January, the sun comes back in spades, 10 extra minutes a day until we have beautiful blue skies and lots of sunshine and, end of February, March, and April. So lovely.
It really made me feel like this is why the ancients and the ancient peoples, and there was all the seasonal worship, and people knew when the seasons were changing and when everything was happening, because it's so important. It's so different between winter and summer for you guys, and even spring. And like you said, just seeing that sun change and come this way, and the drastic change, 10 minutes a day is a lot. I notice it here compared to being in Vancouver. I notice in Calgary it changes quite a bit too, and it's still light out at 11 o'clock, sometimes a little later in the summer. But yeah, really notice the seasonal changes.
Yeah, for sure. And with those long hours of daylight in the summer, you literally can almost watch things grow in the garden because it's so intense. So that's pretty cool too. But yeah, you do when you're living off of only food that can be produced in your own areas, you really become quite acutely aware of the weather and the seasons, and especially when it comes to food from the land, foraged food. Like those things, often they're only available for about 2 weeks, each of these foraged foods. So there's no procrastinating allowed.
Right.
You miss opportunity.
Yeah, that's a good point. So how did you decide your radius around Dawson City?
I wanted to just use the area that we would normally hunt, fish, gather from, and the food producers that are associated with Dawson. It turns out to be about 100 miles or 150 kilometers, but I didn't set out a specific radius, but that just turns out to be the general area.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And, and it also turns out like Dawson is on the traditional territory of the Toronto Quechin. And so basically it's kind of the territory of the Toronto Quechin that we got our food from. So.
Right. And did something happen one year that the road blocked or something? And you guys, because, you hear all these stories about, the grocery stores only have 3 days of food and, you're only going to go 3 days if something happened.
Yeah, I think up north, that vulnerability really hits home, when the road gets closed, or if you're further north, if the plane or the ship gets weathered out, because you do start to see the food go off the shelf pretty fast. So back in, 2012, I think was the first time that I was aware when the road was shut down for a few days from a landslide. And in the big box stores in Yukon's capital of Whitehorse, like the grocery store shelves were going bare within 48 hours. So that was pretty remarkable. We were a little saved in Dawson, but only because one of our grocery store owners actually out of pocket paid for a plane to bring in a shipment of food from Edmonton to Dawson. So that was a pretty big personal donation.
Yeah.
But since then, there's been times when the road into Dawson's been closed from flooding or forest fire. And again, you really notice when those trucks don't come in, because 97% of our food is trucked in.
Yeah.
So that was a real wake up call for me to realize and start thinking about where our food comes from, because there's a carbon footprint to that. There's a vulnerability to that. And there's also a nutritional aspect to that. When I was doing my research into this, I discovered that 50 to 75% of the nutrients in fresh greens are lost within 5 days of picking. So that really made me think, if I'm buying fresh spinach in my grocery store up here in Dawson in February, like how much nutrition is left in that.
Yeah.
And I was also, inspired by days gone by, prior to colonization. Of course, the indigenous people here ate 100% off the land for thousands of years, of course. So, and then even, 100 or so years ago, before there were roads up to the Yukon, when you had to come by over the Chilkoot Pass and by steamship, Dawson produced 97% of its own food. And so we've kind of done a total about face and become more and more reliant on foods that are trucked in. So, the combination of recognizing our vulnerability and the implications of that with being inspired by what we used to be able to do in the past made me wonder if we could still do it again. So that was the challenge that I put to myself.
Yeah, that's what it was, huh? That's very interesting. It made me think of how, because of your climate as well, like maybe how the Vikings or some of the northern peoples would have lived off the land without electricity. Like it seemed like it wasn't too far off what they would have had to do, except for electricity, which, didn't make didn't seem to make that much of a difference with what you were doing. I mean, besides, like even the way some of your stuff was refrigerated underground, in that trailer kind of thing there, and then a lot of the farming, some of the farming equipment and all that. Of course, technology made a difference, but yeah, I feel like you still did things in somewhat of a primitive way as well.
Yes. And, interestingly, the previous documentary that I did all the time in the world, also about my family, was when we took our kids when they were 10, 8, and 4, and we went into the Yukon bush to live in a small, totally off-grid, no electricity, no running water, no phone, no internet cabin for 9 months over the winter. So in that case, we were cooking with wood stove and hauling our water from the creek. And so this, in a way, kind of feels like part 2 of that experience. But a lot of our farmers here also live on the far sides of rivers that sometimes aren't accessible other than by boat in the summer, and many of them are farming off grid, so that has its own challenges, of course. And then there's the Trondequitchin are really doing an amazing job at revitalizing traditional knowledge and sharing it to the youth of our community and to everybody, really. And so, some of those ways go back to days when there wasn't a lot of amenities. So, learning how to smoke fish, for example, and preserve it that way, things like that. So, it's, I think, I feel that the pandemic has made us all really aware of the length of the food chain.
Yeah.
And the need to shorten it, and how much we need to be able to rely on what we have in our own communities, especially in times of crisis, and how important it is to rely on our own communities for the staples and the things that will help us survive, and also just how much knowledge there is in our own communities if we just seek it out. Whether that be the indigenous communities, the local farmers, the gardeners, people who are older and remember a previous day when things were done differently and everybody had a root cellar and everybody canned and everybody had a meat locker. Like, these are all really valuable resources.
Yeah. And not only do you get it all locally, but you meet all the people that you get it from, and that sort of builds more of a community and some trust around, exactly where your food is coming from.
Yeah, for sure. I knew where every single ingredient on my plate came from, and not just, knowing theoretically, but I knew the people who helped put it there. I knew how they farmed, how they treated their animals. I knew their animals. I knew the geography. I sometimes, was a place where I had been gathering food myself. So, that's a pretty strong connection to your food. And it's really quite a humbling experience. And also, you realize that it does take a community to feed a family. And I hope anyway, that what the film shows is not only, my personal journey and my family's journey trying to do this through the tears and the laughter and the stress, but also I hope the film really highlights all the amazing initiatives that this community is doing, both the Trondequitchin and our local farmers, to make our community more food secure.
Yeah, definitely. And so it seemed to take a lot of planning. I mean, did you you must have planned on when the start and the finish was, because you wanted to go a year. I mean, I remember halfway through, your family was kind of challenging you and you're deciding whether, look, if you wanted to keep going. And obviously it was good to see the family camaraderie as well through the whole thing, and everybody learning and growing. But how did you do it physically through the season? Like, did you start it in May or June? I don't think I caught that in the film when you actually started.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of vague in the film because really you start prepping and gathering, like I say, when things are ready, which wasn't necessarily the official start date. So,
okay.
But we started in the summer, ended the following summer.
Yeah.
And it was important, of course, for me to go a whole year because, you know, if you think about eating local to your community, you know, probably almost no matter where you live in Canada, it's not that hard to think about it in the summer and fall, but it's a lot harder to think about where you're going to find your food in February or January. So a year was definitely important to get from one growing season to the next. And then, yeah, I just, you know, I thought I'd start at a time of plenty, but which in many ways was the right decision, but also it made it really challenging because not only was I, well, I mean, a few things you have to know about me is that, like, I was not a cook, I was not a gardener, I was not a forager. I mean, I went into this as a blank page. So not only was I having to learn how to do things like make my own butter and, you know, how I was going to find sweeteners without sugar. And, but I was also having to harvest and preserve enough food for a family of 5 for a whole year, all at the same time.
Yeah.
Plus, you know, cooking for this family that can eat for 9, I'm sure it was equivalent of feeding 9. And when you have to make every little bit of snack food, you know, it's not just the breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but all that snack food and then all the bare ingredients that go into making that food. Often you're trying to make those from scratch. So it was totally overwhelming at first. You know, there's no other way around it. But I continue to do this every year. Like, I still stock our house with a year's worth of food, and now it's not overwhelming. Now it takes a bit of time, but certainly totally manageable.
Yeah, well, that's one of the questions I had right after watching the film is how long would it take for that to become normal, or for you to get into a routine where you feel efficient and you're not going through those learning curves. So you're still doing it?
Yeah, still doing it. And this is what, 3 years, 3 years later.
So,
I mean, you know, not 100% anymore, but I'd say I still eat 90% local to my community.
Wow, that's
and
great.
My family's probably 70 to 75%.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, when the pandemic hit earlier this year and people were starting to worry about supplies from stores, I felt incredibly fortunate because I had put away, again, a year's worth of food. So, you know, other than the toilet paper, which I guess we could have used moss if we had to, I didn't need to go to the store. So that also really hit home again for me, just, you know, how important this is.
Yeah. Yeah, the timing is impeccable to do this documentary. I mean, it's really amazing because this has been on everybody's mind. What happens if things get cut off? I mean, not only are we sort of stuck at home. I mean, tonight we're going through we just heard that there's more of a lockdown here in Alberta, but not only that, but you know, if the supply chains get messed up, how are people going to do it? And I was shocked at the amount of storage. Like, when you showed how much food you're actually storing, I felt like that's a lot. Like, isn't that too much? But you go through it all. I mean, I was shocked at how much you go through.
Yeah. When you have your year's worth of food under one roof, it's pretty astounding, actually, how much you do go through. And storage is a huge issue. You know, I mean, it's not. Like, not everybody, of course, can store a moose and a pig and 35 chickens and 30 chum salmon, not to mention a year's worth of vegetables and berries under their roof. You know, I mean, that's just not practical for the majority of people. But I think that, you know, comes to one of the main choke points. Like, I mean, stores are called stores because they store things for us. Yeah. But if those stores or the farmers producing things could store the local food, you know, in root cellars or community cold rooms and whatnot, and or big freezers, then you could go back to something reasonable where you get your week's worth of meat and your week's worth of vegetables, but at least it's still come from your own community. And if it was harvested in the summer, maybe it's flash freeze frozen, and so you can still get your local broccoli or zucchini in the winter. It's just frozen from when it grew in the summer. So I think that's one of the key points, because then you don't have to be, importing your garlic from China and your cucumbers from Mexico.
Just doesn't make sense. I mean, so how many people are in Dawson City approximately?
Depends who you ask, but I'd say the winter population is around 1,500.
Okay. So how do you think that could scale up? Like, if you were able to, like, just in your own estimation, by going through this just with your large family, I mean, could you scale that up to all of Dawson City? Would it be possible? Would it be or would it be 500 people, 1,000 people, or could you do 10,000? Like, I have no idea personally how possible it would be to just feed a whole community and how big you could get.
Yeah, that was on my mind through this whole experiment. And I talked to the farmers about that, and I talked to the conservation officers, as to the food from the land, if it would sustain us, if everybody was eating local like my family did. And certainly we couldn't do it cold turkey.
No.
Community.
Yeah.
But I do think it's possible. Like, the farmers definitely feel that, if we decided as a community to go that route, or if we were forced to go that route, that they could produce more and more.
Yeah.
And when I talked to the conservation officers, they also thought that, between the moose and the caribou and the grouse and the rabbits, that would also help sustain and supplement us as a whole community. So I do think it's possible. I think it would mean eating in moderation for sure. It also means making use of the whole animal, which I think is important regardless. If you just butcher a pig or a moose for the roasts and the steaks, there's so much other nutritional value that you're missing out on. There's the incredible nutrition and flavor in the bones and the marrow and the blood and the organs and the brain and the nose. So once you start, not just thinking roasts and steaks, once you start thinking whole animal, like, that animal actually can go much, much farther to feeding a family or a community. So after doing this experiment, after talking to the farmers about it, after talking to the conservation officers about it, I do think it would be possible for Dawson to be able to feed itself. Yeah. If we chose to or had to, but it would mean changing, of course, how we eat.
And store. I mean, it would be a lot of logistical changes for sure. But I was just curious, and you've answered the question about how far could you scale this up without it becoming non-local, kind of,
Yeah.
And have it sustainable. I mean, you wouldn't want to just hunt your way out of the area or overfish or over farm or
Yeah, it definitely has to be sustainable for sure. And I mean, that's the kind of, farming and harvesting that does go on here. So that's great. Everybody who does that here is well aware of that. So yeah, that would be key. But I think it also brings up questions then, as far as, like, you can take it, how many steps you take it from in the local department. So if you want to go all the way local, then you also need to be thinking about saving seeds, which has an advantage because the seed adapts over time to this climate. So that's very valuable. And also wanting to think about local fertilizer options And so people who are raising livestock, that produces fertilizer that can fertilize the crops, which is great, and also producing feed, for the livestock. And we have, a couple of people now who are getting pretty good at growing hay despite our really short growing season. I mean, people who grow hay in Alberta would just roll their eyes as to what the farmers up here have to deal with to grow hay, but they can still manage, and some grains too. So you depending how far you want to take it, you have to think of that whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
But I do think it's possible to move in that direction for sure.
Yeah. And you're I mean, talk about cows and feeding and all that. You were able to taste milk or you taste what the cow had eaten through the milk, the different milks?
Yeah, I mean, we have the northernmost dairy in North America.
Wow.
And the Sadlers moved to our area only a few years before this experiment started. So when I first had the idea brewing, we had no dairy cows here, of course. Like, who thinks about dairy cows in the far north? So I thought, okay, I'm going to have to do this year dairy free, which would be a huge challenge for me because I'm a dairy lover. But fortunately for me, the Sadlers moved in with one and then a second dairy cow, and the herd gradually built from there. So I had access to milk, which was amazing because when you have access to milk, then you have access to making your own butter and your own yogurt and your own ice cream even, and your own cheese. So that was brilliant. So yes. And yeah, talk about that connection to your food. I could literally tell, like, the milk would taste a bit different throughout the year based on what the cows were eating, if they're out in pasture in the summer or if they were, eating more silage in the winter. So that, and even depending what they were grazing on, you could tell the difference. So that's just super cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure my taste buds just really came alive and became super sensitive during that year, especially living without salt.
Yeah, one of you were saying that you finally stopped craving salt. I can't remember if that was you or your daughter.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it took a few months, and at first, of course, everything tasted incredibly bland because even if you don't add salt to your cooking, which most of us do, anything that we buy, canned, has got a fair amount of salt in it. So we're always having all this salt. So you take that away, food initially tastes incredibly bland, but then something transforms, and then your taste buds come alive again, and then you start to really be able to taste the flavors of the food, and that's just so cool. Like tomatoes started to taste salty, and spinach started to taste salty, and all these vibrant flavors just shone forth, and it was so delicious.
Oh, that's fascinating because these foods are engineered for salt, sugar, fat. The stuff that's coming mass produced, that's not even, it's half fake food, is hardly even real. It's engineered for those taste buds, and it's there to get you and keep you eating. So it's good to know that if you stop that your whole thing will change over,
That's right.
Yeah.
You just have to put up with it for a couple of months, and then you're home free. My husband came up with a theory, that maybe things like all these spices and sauces were created to camouflage the taste of bad food, and take those away, and the food has to speak for itself then.
Right. So speaking of that, the healthy part of this, I mean, I was waiting to hear what would happen, and you definitely felt the difference. I don't know how, I mean, I know your husband lost a lot of weight at first. I don't know if he gained it all back or not, but did the kids notice a difference health-wise too? And maybe you can talk about some of the positive health impacts that you had experienced directly.
Sure. Well, I'll just say we didn't get scurvy and we didn't starve. There's the spoiler alert. I felt tremendously healthy. So for me, without having to think about it or work on it, my weight, I lost a little bit of weight, but it stabilized and stayed at quite a healthy weight. And I used to have high blood pressure and have to take medication for it. And when I was eating 100% local, I was able to go off all my medication, and my blood pressure has remained normal ever since. So that was kind of the most dramatic change I saw. But also, just energy level really was good. And that was interesting to me because, of course, there's no local source of caffeine up north. So it meant giving up caffeine entirely. And it made me realize what a crutch it had been in my life before then. I'm a recovering caffeineaholic. But without it, you don't have that excuse to stay up super late and get all those things done when you should really be going to bed because your body's telling you that you're tired. So you just go to bed when you're tired, and then you end up having
better
quite
sleep.
A lot of energy.
Yeah, and better sleep too. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I felt great. And that's, one of many reasons why I've continued on this course. Now, yeah, you're right. My husband, it was most dramatic at first. He lost 15 pounds a month for the first 2 months. And I think that was just like in the first 3 months, we had 0 grains.
Yeah.
We had there was no sugar. There was some birch syrup and a little bit of honey for sweetener. So you take out the grains, you take out the sugar, and it just kind of melted off of him. Yeah, which was super, super interesting.
Almost keto. I wonder if he actually just went into ketosis then.
Yeah,
like the keto diet is so popular. It seems like that was, a lot of that is just cutting out those grainy carbs and those, the simple carbs and the sugars. So.
Yeah, I mean, we still had, we still ate a lot of potatoes and stuff like that. So it wasn't an entire
right. Yeah, and the honey, and you still had the honey and stuff. Yeah.
But I think, to me, it just sort of shows like how influential, I guess, all the bread products and grain products and the sugars that are in the foods that we eat, like how much that makes a difference. And the other thing, like just flipping to the end of the year, at the end of the year, a friend made us a batch of chocolate chip cookies because we hadn't had a chocolate chip cookie for a year. And I had a bite, and one bite was like a total sugar rush. And I thought, wow, like my insulin level obviously had totally regulated for this low amount of sugar. And it made me think, it's kind of sad that I used to be able to eat 6 of those cookies and not even notice it. Yeah. Whereas now one bite was a total sugar rush. So that also made me think, whoa, like in my normal diet, I was consuming a lot of sugar without even realizing that.
And not just like natural sugars like honey or syrup. It was like refined white sugar, I guess, would be in most of the stuff, right? Yeah. And just in everything. Yeah. Or the corn syrup or whatever they call that.
Yeah. I think that's one of the worst. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you guys doctors too, or were you doing medicine there? In the past, did this whole thing give you
route to becoming a filmmaker? But,
no, I know. It's hard to picture in some ways, but did this change your view on health at all from a doctor's perspective or from a medical professional perspective?
In some regards, for sure. I mean, I think certainly realizing like the sugar load and the carb load and the effects of that, for sure. And also, like, the question as to why my high blood pressure resolved doesn't have a clear answer.
Right.
Like it wasn't going off caffeine necessarily because I tried that before and it didn't work. I'm not sure it was the no salt because we're still getting salt in the meat and fish that we're eating. And I think, the salt and high blood pressure thing has gotten a little weaker in the scientific medical community as to the link there.
Salt seems to be making a comeback.
Yeah. So, I mean, not too much, obviously, but so that could have had something to do with it. I don't know. And I was having a really heavy red meat diet, and I did check, like I checked my blood work every 3 months.
You were having a heavy red meat diet during this phase or before?
Yeah. Because all our protein is animal based.
Yeah.
There's no protein we can produce here that's not. So, between the moose and the pork and there was chicken and fish too, but moose is the staple. But my cholesterol, was totally fine throughout the year, even though it was a high animal fat, high red meat diet.
Interesting.
So that was interesting. But there is a theory now about the microbiome. I don't know if you've heard that theory or not, but it's the kind of the natural flora and bacteria that are in our guts.
Yeah.
And there's a theory that as we've come to eat more and more processed food, that microbiome has changed and that is leading to a lot of health issues.
Yeah.
So one theory for why my blood pressure resolved is that microbiome came back to a more natural balance, and therefore my blood pressure also went back to normal. So, who knows? But it's interesting to think about all these things and maybe some of the more subtle and hidden implications of what we choose to eat that we're not even aware of.
Yeah, I've also heard some studies of, we got into this a couple of years ago when we were into more of the biohacking stuff and like Ben Greenfield and some top athletes, and they had, guests on where they talk about the studies about gut biome and your ancestry and where you're from. Like if you're from the north, like that, your gut can handle different carbs and different things than somebody from the equator, or even your genes coming from those areas. So it's interesting to see the impact.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and I think that also just ties into, again, like local eating. I think is so important, and what we can produce where we live is different than what you can produce where you live. But so you can't just sort of take one brush and paint the whole food issue globally with one solution, because it doesn't always work. Like, for example, I understand, I understand veganism, and I understand some people's wish to have less meat-based diets for a whole bunch of reasons. And in many places in the world, that probably makes a lot of sense. In the North, that doesn't make any sense because, again, there's no protein that we can produce that's not animal-based. So if you're going to get rid of all animal-based protein, then we're shipping stuff up from who knows where, no idea how it's been produced or processed, and isn't at all natural to our climate. And I'm not so sure that that's the right choice. So I think there isn't a one solution fits all. And I think the whole idea of the terroir of food and eating locally and doing what makes sense for your community and where you're from has a lot of basis to it.
Yeah. And then you understand the pushback on the factory farming and all that stuff, because of course that just doesn't seem, so it's understandable that I'm struggling with that myself with Darren hunting now, and I'm deciding whether to eat more or less meat, to be honest. I don't really want to go out and hunt for myself, but it's a struggle. But I think I've also heard somewhere about eating local helps with chronic conditions as well, which is a big problem now. And I'm trying to remember where I heard that, but somebody had healed a bunch of chronic conditions just by eating locally as well. So that wouldn't really surprise me.
Yeah, and that might fit into the microbiome issue again, and also getting away from the highly processed foods and just, again, like knowing where things come from. Like I think can't give you the facts, but I've definitely heard that soy, for example, is one of the highest pesticide uses to grow soy. So like, you got to weigh all the factors when you're making your choices, for sure.
Yeah. Are you planning on like taking this any further in the future? What now that the film's out and you're pushing the film and all, and make sure we remind you that we got to tell people where to watch it and all that and how to get it. But is there anything for like a book or more of a instruction manual kind of thing for communities that could start putting this together? Because I could see it being a long, arduous process if you don't have anybody to learn from.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's several things that I hope are going to happen now that the film is finally finished and out there in the world. I mean, one is I hope that the film will have a long tail life, and that either virtually now or later when we're allowed to gather, that we can do a lot of community screenings of the film and bring people into the room and have panel discussions about issues local to each community and help people in each community learn how to access local food and to celebrate the local food that can be produced in their area. So I think that's a big goal of mine. And funny that you mentioned the book idea, because that is also another idea that's percolating is to put some of these lessons learned into book form, kind of in an entertaining way with some anecdotes and some beautiful photography, but a lot of the sort of the how-tos, how do you make sugar out of sugar beets, for example, and the million ways to use nasturtium seed pods that people just let go in their garden, and different kinds of spice blends that you can forage probably just outside your door. That's definitely in the idea stage. Yeah. So hopefully that will come to fruition, because this is an issue that I feel passionately about, and that I think it's really important to shorten that food chain and to empower communities to be in touch with their food, and for consumers to be able to promote the producers as much as possible, so we can have these really strong local ecosystems. And, and it also comes to things like learning how to preserve food again, taking a canning course and paying attention to our indigenous communities and that traditional knowledge about, these important plants from the land and important food sources in all parts of the animal. And again, just like all these factors and all these people in our communities that have a really good understanding of what the land that we're each living on can do for us, and how important it is to protect it so it can feed us, and living with it and in resonance with it instead of against it, and pushing against it. Yeah, for sure. And I think like when you have that strong connection to your food and to the people and the animals and the land that provided it, like you gain such an appreciation for those people, animals, and land, and then you want to protect them, and that's super important. Yeah, that's great. That's a great idea. I'd like to know, like, we'll have to keep in touch, and when your book comes out, we'll have to, or like, who knows how long down the road, but we'll help you get that out there as well. Yeah. So should we talk about where people can see the film? Yeah, but I do have one question. How did your kids feel health-wise? Did they notice a difference at all? I know, because I know it's a little bit different with the, the awareness around that kind of stuff. I mean, I didn't. My daughter Kate, especially, she definitely recognized how healthy she felt eating local, and she was 15. So yeah, I think they all did. I mean, they were not. Here's the reality: they were 17, 15, and 12. So the rule was no grocery store food in the house, but when they were out of their house, they made their own decisions. So they weren't 100% like I was and like Gerard was. So maybe they didn't see the same dramatic changes that we did, right. But they certainly, Kate talked quite a bit about just at the end of the year how healthy she felt. And what also is interesting is this past year with the pandemic taking away their usual jobs, all my kids volunteered on or worked for local farmers this summer, which was super cool, I think, because they just got even a deeper understanding of where their food was coming from and what it took to produce it.
Yeah.
And Sam, he was out in the bush for about a month foraging for morel mushrooms for a cash crop. So he got a really good sense of the work that goes along with foraging, but also how to do it sustainably and just that connection to the land.
Nice.
So there was a lot of pushback during the year, for sure, as you would expect from 3 teenagers and having their mother take all their favorite foods out of the house for the year. But I do feel that deep down there, they definitely also were affected in a positive way by the experience.
Yeah, I think it's important time for people to watch this. People are leaving the cities. There's either people sort of trying to get people back into the cities, but there's a bunch of people that just want to go live off the land a little bit, or at least get closer to that. So, I mean, the timing is impeccable for this experience to be shown like this in a documentary.
Yeah, I agree. I hope I hope the film is inspiring for folks. I mean, there's you watched it. There's a lot of humor in the film. It's a story first, so there's lots of entertainment and humor, and I hope it's uplifting, which we could all use these days. Is a little uplifting news and inspiring, but I certainly don't expect people to go do what I did, which was a little on the crazy extreme side, but even no matter where you live, like even in urban centers, like there's ways to, there's ways to access local food from outside and around your city, but there's also ways to produce food even within the city. There's an amazing book called Eat the City, which is all about all the food production that happens in the heart of New York City, one of the biggest cities in the world. And so, whether it's something small like growing a few herbs on your windowsill or planting, a potting bag to make it into a lettuce tower in the summer on your balcony, or maybe at your workplace, instead of putting ornamental shrubs outside your office building, you plant berry bushes or snap peas that people can graze on as they walk by. Like
that's a great idea.
There's all kinds of ways to make our green spaces and our growing spaces edible, whether we're urban or rural. So I hope it's inspiring for folks. I hope it inspires folks to just start to look at the labels when they go to the store. Everything says where it comes from. Just have a look, and think about how far that's coming from, and then think, okay, wait a minute, like maybe there's frozen spinach that was produced in my province and I could have that now instead of spinach that's come fresh from halfway across the world and has no nutrition left in it.
Yeah, good point. The other thing before I forget, I almost forgot to ask you this. Do you think that that eating 3 meals a day, like, did you notice eating less? Like, were you guys eating less, or were you able to eat less, or was it, because your stomach's kind of adjust to, and we've thrown around the idea here a little bit, and you see these people doing these other diets where they eat 1 big meal a day, or they do intermittent fasting, and it makes me think, as ancestors going back when we're hunting and gathering, that we have a hunt and we get all this, but then we might have to go a ways without it. Like, I feel like we're in this 3 meal a day thing from, the cereal companies and the food, the propaganda from the food corporations. Like, do we really need 3 big meals a day? Or, did you guys notice a difference in that type of thing? Like how much you actually ate?
I think what I noticed was less lunch and less snack food. So we would have a big hearty breakfast and we would have a big hearty supper. Lunch would be more meager. And, snack food was basically carrots, dried meat, or a glass of milk. So, Yeah, so that's where I noticed it most. So yeah, I don't know if I can comment on the the one
snake
meal,
diet,
the free meal, but yeah, it's hard to know. But that's kind of how it developed for us over that year.
Yeah.
And maybe that was purely just practically because breakfast foods and dinner foods were easy to figure out, and lunch food was incredibly difficult without bread and peanut butter and bagels.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I should mention that came about from this, as far as eating habits goes, was eating seasonally.
Yes.
And that I also think is really important. Like I have not had a lettuce salad now since September, and I'm not going to again until June or July. And I'm okay with that. Like my salads now are, cabbage and kohlrabi and carrot, and it's delicious. And there's an old saying that in the summer we eat above the ground, and in the winter we eat below the ground.
Yeah.
And I really found that, when fall comes, I crave the root vegetables, and when spring comes, I'm craving the leafy greens. And there is actually a lot of joy in eating seasonally, because when you do eat things, they taste at their best and they're the most nutritious. I remember growing up when the only time we got a mandarin orange was at Christmas, and how special that was and how delicious that was. And I think now, you can get a mandarin orange any time of year, but it's lost its appeal. So, why do we think we have to have a fresh cucumber or a fresh tomato in February? Like we don't. We could have canned tomatoes, in February that were grown and preserved when they're at their height of flavor and nutrition. And I still make stir fries in the winter, but I use things that I can freeze, like zucchini and peppers, or root vegetables in there, like cabbage and carrots, and it's all good.
And that might be a real big aspect towards the health part. I mean, if you're eating seasonally, you're resonating with the land, you're in tune with the land, you're in tune with the weather, with all that stuff, it makes sense.
It becomes very holistic without even trying.
Yeah. And if you guys can do it up there in Dawson City, where you're minus 30, minus 40 in the winter, you've got a tiny summer, it doesn't even get dark. If you guys can do it there all year round, then almost anywhere can do it.
You bet.
Bet. Excellent. Yeah. Well, where can people watch the show? What's the best place for them to get it?
Yeah, so it's currently having a theatrical run across the country, but the theaters are all closing.
Yeah.
So it's now having what we call a virtual theatrical, which, is unfortunate because you're not going to be able to see the majestic Yukon on the big screen in a theater, but it's got the advantage that anybody can see it anywhere in Canada from home. So if you go to the film's website, firstweeat.ca, to current screenings, you can go down the list, and anything that talks about virtual, basically you can click on that. You can support a theater if there's a theater on there in your area, or you can go to the Blue Ice Docs option there, and that one's available to anybody across Canada. And you basically buy a theater ticket, but watch it at your convenience from home.
Nice.
So, silver lining of COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
Way more accessible for the next few weeks anyway, while it's still doing this circuit.
Right on. Well, it's been a great chat. I mean, I'll put all the links in the show notes for people as well. They can just click on there and get to your stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Thanks for your interest, and we'll hope that Darren can help fill the freezer full of meat.
Oh, yeah.
So that you've got naturally harvested, free range organic meat for your winter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, thanks for doing that. I think it was a really important documentary and really important time, and I'm sure people will be inspired by it.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Teach me all your secrets to get a good handle on a better way to live. How does one get out of bed every day in the throes of the apocalypse? Should I bury my head in the sand or sabotage their evil plan? I feel really trapped, an ant burned by a magnifying glass. It's all a little bit too convenient, all the evidence went up in flames. Phonies, fraudsters, scammers belong in the slammer. My friend, best give up their names. Should I call on militiamen or pass out a petition pen? I feel really trapped, an ant burned by a magnifying glass. I don't know what y'all been told, but I got a soul made out of gold. Sound off, 1, 2, sound off, 3, 4, cadence count, 1, 2. A big ball! Some time ago a crazy dream came to me. I dreamt I was walking into World War III. As prophetic as humidity, as aching bones, as frantic animals. Sophia wrote it down, built an ark, now she floats it down a river dark. As prophetic as deja vu, as wormwood, as falling stars above. Sophia wrote it down, built an ark, now she floats it down a river dark. I can't even hear my own thoughts for the life of me over the din of a bruised and broken culture. The media spins and splatters and spins and clatters, and I cringe because it's psychological warfare. Don't you feel yourself getting really mad? How did we let it get this bad? Don't you feel really trapped, like a brain in a vat? Trying really hard to close Pandora's box, but sirens are singing me off a cliff. I'm looking to hitchhike to Shangri-La over yonder. Sophia, would you give me a lift? Hopped out of the Hegelian rebellion. Say goodbye to all you Machiavellians. Let evil destroy itself. I'm bound for Shangri-La. Shangri-La. I'll let you be in my dream if I could be in yours. I'll let you be in my dream if I could be in yours. As prophetic as morning doves, as groundhogs, as fallen stars above. Sophia wrote it down, built an ark, now we're floating it down a river dark. As prophetic as white wolves, as butterflies, as rainbows. Sophia sings it now. We built a plane, now we're taking flight above a river bright.
la 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 Shangri-La. Grimerica.ca/support. Grimerica.ca/support. Oh, Fee-Fi, Fiddly-I-O. And tell them Felix sent you there.